have with me here Gene Ching. He's a 32nd generation layman disciple of the original Shaolin Temple and was publisher of Kung Fu Tai Chi magazine. He's authored hundreds of martial arts articles and scripts for martial arts instructional videos. He's the author of the book Shaolin Trips, and he's also served as weapons expert on El Rey Network's Man-at-Arms, The Art of War with Danny Trejo. This was in 2017 and 2018. And he's been a longtime friend and collaborator. Welcome, Gene. How did I do? Let's continue with an update. Welcome to the Comics Fu Show this time, Gene Ching.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Eager to see brother Kurtis as soon as he gets back from his Kung Fu class.
Yes, exactly. He's look, we already have comments. Co-host Kurtis should be here eminently, but we have right on time Wuxia Man saying hello from Wuxia Man of Immortal Studios.
Right on. That's my dear nephew, Brian Chansey, who's a brilliant observer of martial arts cinema. We met for the first time and we just talked all night because, when you get that opportunity to totally geek out on some topic like martial arts cinema, and you find somebody who's like, on par in the same room, there's a lot to talk about. Good friend.
Excellent. And speaking of geeking out, right, we have my buddy Kurt Sasso from Two Geeks Talking. We met last year, and also a martial artist. I think he's a judo man, or perhaps it's jiu-jitsu. It's been a long day, so Kurt, correct me with those details. But I mean, it's so awesome to see folks joining us, Gene, and I'm particularly excited that we could kind of do this sort of thing with an audience, right? Rather than hiding it from a boss or something like that.
Oh man. So to give that some context, for nearly 20 years, Patrick and I shared an office, and we were at opposite corners of a group office with our other coworkers scattered across the room. And we used to have these long, involved, nerd geek conversations over direct messaging as other things were happening, like making the magazine or what have you. But
making a magazine, planning a tournament. I mean, it goes on.
And the tournament's coming around again. We're back in action.
Excellent.
Contracts have been signed. It's coming together.
Awesome. Well, I want to hear about. I saw you wrote up about it, but Kurt clarified with his practice on Japanese jiu-jitsu. Gene, I'm sure you can come up with an anecdote right off the top of your head relevant to that art. Go. Come on, Wally J.
Is my go-to for jiu-jitsu. Master Small Circle, the man you just did not want to shake hands with, because he was the sweetest old gentleman, but as soon as you shook hands with him, he would show you a small circle like nobody's business, and he was like in his 80s and tie me in a freaking knots, man.
I know. I felt it too. Wally J, like legendary, proponent of small circle jiu-jitsu, right? Yeah, and you shake your hand, and you had to do it, right, to be polite. But I mean, that's a classic eat bitter lesson, right?
Right, exactly. And he was gentle about it. He knew just as how hard to throw you. He the man had great skills. So much respect for that man.
Yeah. So look him up. Look up Wally J. If you've heard that name if you're hearing that name for the first time tonight, you should do yourself a favor and check out that historical figure. And we have here Capitan Wallace, also Hungar practitioner, Hang to Kurtis, who should be on his way. Also a musician. We premiered his a live performance of his on the show for Lunar New Year. Mm-hmm. And then also another guest, Jill Horn, a gallery patron. She visited with me when I had my gallery show over the summer, and it's great to have her along. Welcome, Jill. Cool. So this is like our Lunar New Year party. It's day 3, right? According to my research, that's like celebrating the god of wealth. sort of thing. So perfect time to launch a Kickstarter campaign, if you ask me.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, and Kurt, will do. Thanks for heading down the rabbit hole of that sensei now. So Kurt, you're gonna have your eyes open with Wally J, and it's funny that he would mention rabbit hole, don't you think? This being
Indeed.
the year of the rabbit.
It's all about
So
that rabbit hole this year. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Gene,
Getting back to Wally J, I just heard his wife, his widower, Bernice J, just celebrated her 100th birthday. And she is the oldest living survivor. I think the only living survivor of their sensei, whose name I'm blocking right now. I want to say Okun. I'm blocking on his sensei's name.
all right, Kurt, if you're looking up some info, find out for us so we can put that in the chat. But yeah, I mean, talk about lineage, right? We were talking about the whole, and this is something that you and I have talked about in the past, right? How Kung Fu is kind of like still an emanation of like oral tradition, as like how the history's got like an oral component as well as the written and the performative. And
yeah. I mean, in Buddhism, we say Buddhism is passed down from warm hand to warm hand. And I think that applies very directly to martial arts in that, you can read about it, you can watch movies, you can do all that sort of process, but there's nothing like the actual touch of it, to feel Wally J tie your hand up in a knot so effortlessly and realize, you just can't escape this guy who's got 30 years on you, and he knows exactly where you're going to go. He knows exactly all your routes out, and he seals them as soon as he feels you go that direction. And to experience that kind of expertise, you can't really get that sense unless you're shaking his hand. And in that moment, that immediate moment, you're like, wow, this guy, he's got it. He's got, bow down to that guy. He's got crazy skills. And you could sit down and analyze and break down in terms of literature or video analysis what he does, but that's not going to replace the moment. I think that's actually shifting now. I think that there's a lot more documentation of the martial arts, and I think one of the things that was really a delight in the positioning of our magazine, Patrick, was that we were at a time when that started to move. When I first started there at the turn of millennium to 2020, when we folded, there was such a growth in sharing, in academic research, and the internet opened up so much in terms of people being able to contact each other from other continents who were the same lineage and share stories and work things out. The whole idea of crowdsourced research like Wikipedia started happening in the martial arts. And so it's fascinating. We're kind of getting our story together in a better way than we ever have before. And,
right. Or even like the Kung Fu magazine forum, right? Like how that's been such a, it kind of started when the internet was the wild and woolly west, and it's still there,
The internet was young, right? Before the bots took over. Yeah, I'm still there. I mean, pretty much every day I'll throw my news feeds on there just because, I've got all these, people wake up, have their coffee and read the paper. I have my tea and I read my news feeds, and all my news feeds are, martial arts, what have you, movies. And so I'm always finding bits and tossing them in, still feeding the forum. And,
and I keep a tab open for it. So when the computer, I may not necessarily to turn to that tab as quickly as you do, but it's there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
but I mean,
posting on the tiger's tail thread.
yeah. I mean, it's just like part of the whole thing, the whole collection of info, right? And that's something that Kurtis and I have been doing now, trying to put it into the medium of comics, which has been something, as it's having learned to read by reading comics, right? And then having taken that language into the sequential arts, right, of magazine layout, and then so having always watched like the rise, the cycles of interest in martial arts, when Avatar: The Last Airbender was the thing, or when Mortal Kombat was the
Right,
thing, you know.
right, right.
And now it's kind of circled back around. Shang-Chi is the thing, you know, or
Shang-Chi, Cobra Kai,
Cobra Kai. Yeah, exactly.
the renaissance of the Karate Kid. Um, I'm fascinated to see that Crouching Tiger is having a renewed theatrical release, partly riding the popularity of Michelle Yeoh. And this morning she just got nominated for Academy Award for Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Rightly so, you know.
Yeah, that film took the most, 11 nominations. And
Oh,
A24, which did that, they did The Whale, they did another film that's up there. But that A24, which has been kind of a small artsy, but an artsy producer, she just they took more nominations than any other studio. So that's incredibly exciting for the independents.
oh yeah, yeah.
Or
There's
resistance.
A24 delivers, and Kurt's with us, right? We do hope she. I mean, she deserves it. It's
Yeah,
so her time.
yeah,
And Wu Xiaoman says also, Crouching Tiger also has a TV series from Sony being developed.
yeah. I heard
That
some rumor about that. I didn't know that actually got fully greenlit. I remember they were developing it. There was the Sort of Destiny that came
right.
out on
That
Netflix, which was disappointing.
you know,
It was a hard act to follow.
it seemed like it was trying to serve too many masters at once. But Wu
Yeah,
Xiaoman
yeah,
agrees. A24 is making history.
for sure.
I mean, Crouching. I've got a good chunk of the. You can't really call it manga, right? But the comic adaptation, or the original comic translated into English
Right,
of
right,
Crouching Tiger.
right. We
You
carried those
know,
for a short period of time, but didn't
exactly.
do
So
well. Magazine, unfortunately. But
I know the
yeah,
only thing to do
you
worse
got it.
than it was ahead of its time. It'd be doing so well now.
I wonder. You think it would? I wonder.
I mean, I'm just looking at how there's, we both know. Okay, well, first of all, let's see here. There will be a 2001
There was.
Taiwanese TV series of Crouching Tiger that got condensed into a 4-hour miniseries.
I see here. Wish I'm at school on this one.
I know that we
The
should
manhwa
have him
term. I
here.
wasn't going to drop that because I was going to go there, but yeah, you're right. Right, you're right.
And then there here, manhua is the term for the Chinese comics. So yeah,
Right.
I have a few translations, but the way the climate is now, it seems like those translations would have hit so much harder, right? Than what they were doing in the mid-aughts when they were like out there alone trying
Yeah,
to get those out there.
there's actually a fair amount of Chinese comics. I'm curious if anybody's going to go back and start working them. I'm wondering, Brian, do you know if manhwa is the Chinese same characters as manga? I'll throw that out there. I imagine it is. It sounds like
I want to see him type those characters in there. But Kurt's got a question. Gene, what are your top 3 favorite martial arts films you recommended to someone who isn't in martial arts?
That's tough because so many. I mean, my all-time favorite film of martial arts would have to be Seven Samurai. That's like my all-time favorite film. Period. I think Seven Samurai is just an untouchable masterpiece of film, much less martial arts film. When you start getting into martial arts films, though, I mean, some of my classics. 36 Chambers, really Master Killer, 36 Chamber. Shaolin is one of my go-tos because I feel like I lived that while I was in Shaolin Temple. And God, what would the third be? That's a good question. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. And there's so many, There's so many. And the other thing is that there's so many franchises that, that alone, like lately I've been revisiting the Lone Wolf and Cub franchise, which is still staggeringly beautiful and horribly graphic. I mean, you look at like some of the scenery shots and the way they compose the cinematography is just a gorgeous, gorgeous film. And then they'd have like these exploitive rape scenes and blood spurting all over the place. And you're like, oh my God, what is this director doing? But
Also based on the manga too, right?
that's true. Yeah.
Which was very bloody, although black and white, so not as intense. And then we've got Kurt and Wuxia Man refining our terminology for us.
Yep.
That's so awesome.
So Curtis is saying it is the same term. It's all the same Chinese character, or the same character set, more or less.
Right, just so it would be like the different pronunciations would lead to the different
It's
spelling.
like for example, yokai is yao guai in Chinese. It's the same characters.
And also, I noticed Tengu is also Tengu, same character, same mythical creature.
Interesting. Yeah, I think there's lately I've been seeing a lot of yokai or yao guai influence, and we kind of talked about this a little bit when Shang-Chi came out, because the whole world was it Ta Lo or whatever the world was called. Their representations of the Yao Guai mythical creatures was really spot on, which was very refreshing. And we're seeing it in other, kind of oblique references, like the Harry Potter, the new series.
Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah, they had that reference in I think it was the second movie, to some crazy, obscure Chinese mythological creature. I can't remember what it was called now, but I remember having to look it up and like, what? Oh, that is something. Somebody did their research, so that was kind of cool.
But, and also, in Thor: Love and Thunder. Well, first of all, what's up, Pops? He's back in town. Pops Van Sant is a major online promoter for indie comics. So,
nice.
Having the dawn of indie comics around is always a good thing. Some folk thought Shang-Chi's creatures look like Pokemon.
Well, Pokemon kind of are Yao Guai, or more. Pokemon are closer to yokai. I mean, when you got something like a lamp demon, which is this fixture, and one of my favorite of the yokai. I mean, lamp demons. What the heck? The umbrella demon. That was another one that's like a common yokai creature. What is that about?
Yeah. That's I don't know. I remember.
Oh, there he is.
There he is. We were talking about yokai, and look who showed up.
Oh yeah, exactly. I felt it.
Kirby calling.
How's it going?
Good. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, sir. Looking good.
Yeah. Well, Curtis, we've been having a lively conversation both online and in the chat with drilling down into the differences between Asian comics, US comics, and also mythical creatures. I mean, I'm thrilled.
Definitely.
I should reference, so if you can see this statue, this figurine behind me, my mom built these actually.
No, really?
She was very young, but this is the Peach Warrior, the Peach Blossom, classic story of the Peach Boy. Is a classic story of Japanese mythology, and it's kind of like a Wizard of Oz tale, where this kid gets born in a peach and decides to go off and fight the yokai, the monsters, and he kind of travels along, and he's got I think like 3 or 4 rice balls, and he meets a monkey, and the monkey's hungry, so he gives him a rice ball, and the monkey says, "Well, I'm going to join you on your quest." And then he meets Crane or something. I can't quite remember. It's different, slightly different from different stories. Actually, this character here is the same character. That's nice. Also the Peach Boy. But then they go off and they fight the monsters. And I had actually I gave it to my daughter. We still have it in the family, but it was an old Japanese book. I think it was from the 20s, hardbound, clothbound, that had these just gorgeous plate illustrations of this and several other Japanese folk tales. And the last one, of course, was the Peach Boy. And the final plate was him with his sword out, facing all these demon faces, and they were sort of classic yokai. And I think that was something that that had a very prominent influence on my sense of comics, my sense of martial arts and swordsmanship, perhaps. It was just it had made such an impact in terms of imagery, and like those early. It was almost almost the Yukio style, not quite, but almost the floating world style, which is so comic book, really. It has that same sort of blocky outline, a sort of classical comics, and then colored in. So
I just want to know when the Peach Boy meets Dali.
and I just put that up for color. That's the Dali cookbook for the one. Dali, of course, being Dali, wrote a cookbook. And
so there must be a recipe for peaches in there somewhere, I would imagine.
Mainly, it's a pretty surreal amount. One thing that really blows me away about this book is Salvador Dali predicted avocado toast.
Really?
In this book, he has a recipe for avocado toast.
Wow.
Which is very exotic back then. But his version involved, I think it's like sheep brains or something. I can't remember. The recipes are crazy, like days to prepare, and also lots of, Dali lived in Port Liggett, which actually I had the opportunity to visit when I did my pilgrimage to the Dalinian Triangle, and it's a port town, and so you eat like a lot of shellfish and a lot of fish, and in fact, there's a couple paintings of his that are actually several paintings of that area, and it's a very surreal landscape. The rocks are very interesting, but it also, I think, it fostered him a very particular sense of taste, and so his culinary aspects in that book are challenging. Challenging.
That's great.
Only for a true cooking kung fu master, I guess.
I guess that's something that's way out of my realm. So,
did you hear about when Dali was supposed to be a Baron? Was he supposed to be not Baron Harkonnen, but he was supposed to be in Dune?
The Emperor.
Yeah, he's supposed to be Emperor in Alejandro Jodorowsky's
Dune. Right.
Oh, and he wanted like giraffes on fire and like whatever he wanted.
Yeah,
he was like, yeah, sure, giraffes on fire. Like, let's do it. It's great.
$1 million a minute, I think, was his fee.
Yeah.
Well,
no wonder that movie never got made.
He was brilliant in marketing too.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories of his, and I can't remember the name of the patrons that in Florida who built the St. Petersburg Dali Museum, which is spectacular on level of any of the stuff they have in Europe, because they have hallucinogenic Torador, which is one of his major works. It's the size of a wall. It's a really commanding, beautiful piece. But so there were these rich people, and they were trying to find a new artist to patronize, and they kind of take a fancy to Dali, and Dali sells them a painting, and then when they get the bill, it's like 3 times as much. And it's like, oh yeah, well the painting was what I quoted you, but the frame has to have this frame, and that was 2 times the price of the painting, and that hooked them, and they amassed one of the greatest private collections of Dali works in America. Must be great to be rich, but that's what you guys need to find for your comics, some patron like that, and
or
come up with the ultimate add-on,
Yeah, exactly. I was going to add horse stances, like horse stance instruction to the add-ons, but I don't think it's going to be marketable. So
yeah, not sure that's really
yeah.
Lately I've been really pondering horse stance because my hip went out a little while ago. I'm working on it; it's getting back, but it kind of blew up my horse stance for a little while, and it kind of undid a lot of my box alone, because kung fu is so horse stance driven. And I started thinking, man, they always said, you do your horse stance constantly or you won't have any legs to stand on when you're old. And now I'm old and my horse stance is falling apart. It's like, man, I thought I spent enough time in that stupid stance and it's still giving me issues. It's never goes away, man. Never gets easier.
No, never. Only harder. Your understanding gets easier, right? But don't you think?
I think that in terms of understanding the things that were really obvious, that I kind of like, oh yeah, sure, okay, they're hitting home harder than ever. Like that's a classic example. Yeah, sure, I should have done more horse stance. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And now you're like, man, yeah, I should have done more horse stance because it's not really where I want it to be anymore. And you got to get those skills deep and into the marrow, if you're going to keep them when you get older. That's why I totally respect masters like Wally J. Leon's his son, but Wally J, because, in his senior years, he was still so powerful. When you see an old master that's got that kind of power, I mean, well, your Sifu, Kurtis, YC Wong is still like just a lion. When you see him perform, it's like, oh my God, how old is he now? Oh my God,
Yeah, I just saw him last month. No, November. I saw him in November for his birthday, and got to do just a tiny bit of push hands with him, and still just like, my gosh, it's just like it's like pushing against liquid metal. It's like it's so mobile and just so solid, and it's just that brings a question before I forget, because I always want to pose people this question when I know somebody that has exposure to the martial arts, and I should be asking Patrick this too, but what is like the highest level Kung Fu that you've seen? What's something like somebody or some event just me says, wow, that is like the pinnacle of, because both of you, your exposure to the community is just off the charts. I'd be curious, what would you rank as like top 3 martial arts experiences, things that you've seen, witnessed?
Oh man, so many. I mean, Shaolin Temple, there was so much stuff that went down at Shaolin that was just ridiculous. I mean, just to see like Tago Academy, to see like 10,000 students practicing in harmony, and think, wow, all for each of those 10,000 students, they all have masters, and all those masters get back up to this headmaster here. That dude's got it going on, being able to kick Grandmaster 2 in the nuts 8 times. Patrick was there. He remembers, he had his Master 2 had his little kilt on, and he lifted it up and showed me the goods. There was no cup, no nothing. And, I dropped those kicks in, and, first kick was like, I mean, I didn't want to hurt him. I like him, so, and it was about my front snap kick is probably my strongest kick. And, it would have brought down any normal man. By like kick number 8, I was getting a little frustrated because he wasn't really, so I was starting to really power into it, And that was, he took it, man. Oh man. Wow. But I mean, I saw a really odd example of chi projection at Shaolin Temple where somebody was doing massage, and it was on one of my fellow travelers, and my fellow traveler was like down on the bed, and there was this other guy. It's like, yeah, I'll just do some massage, and because they were sore, right? And he started doing this hand waving BS, and we're like, okay, whatever. And the guy on the bed, who was not a friend of this guy at all, it's like, oh man, that feels great. Whatever you're doing, oh, that is so good. And then we're all just like, he's not touching it. What the hell, And that went on. We're just silent for like 15 minutes while this guy did his chi work, and then he walked off, and then the other guy got up and is like, oh, that was like the best massage I've ever had. I was like, dude, he didn't even touch you. And he's like, no way. You guys are no way. But,
wow.
Those kind of, I mean, those were like the extraordinary, almost like the magic tricks were fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have so much respect for so many of the people that came through our doors and some of the people I've worked with. I think Patrick and I had a really unique, privileged perspective on the martial world. Not only to be able to see it as these people were trying to express themselves to us and how we would depict them in the magazine or the videos or what have you, but also we saw their financials, which was kind of interesting too, because we could see how much they were buying for Target Claw, and that was fascinating on a whole other level. I don't know your question really.
Yeah, no, you did. I mean, that's tremendous.
I mean, I could fill up all 3 slots just talking about, Grandmaster 2, right? Between what Gene was just describing, right? Like, it wasn't just the fact that, Gene kicked him a half dozen times, but then he pulled a 27-foot U-Haul truck, like with his private parts, right? And oh man, talk about the spectacle. But and then also like he's a master painter, right? So he did that cover for me for volume 1, just to kind of like deliver. It's the one that you ordered, Kurtis.
I have that one.
Yeah.
So like his, his whole like wuxia night vibe,
It's
that
crazy. He designs his own clothes. He's a musician, can play guzheng, can play flute. He does this thing where he plays flute while guys wrap chains around his chest and they pull it, and he's playing the flute while they're like pulling it, doing the tug of war. And then he finishes and he pops all the chains, because he's Master 2, Grandmaster 2 had it going on. That's for sure.
That's amazing.
For sure.
Another one that comes to mind that's of heroic proportions would be like Chen Tai Chi master Ren Guanyi. He's Lou Reed's Tai Chi master, but also a international push hands champion. And thanks to the magazine, right, I got to take a seminar with him, and just to feel that fajing,
Didn't he fajing you with his butt, if I remember?
Pretty much. He asked me to bear hug him,
Yeah, he could emit fajing from any part of his body, which is what the Chen guys do. And so he had you like bear hug him or something, and you're like,
I had to lock from around him and horse stance, and 30 seconds later I was flying across the warehouse. It
was a fun moment.
Memorable, But I want to share that because Wuxia Man just started push hands with his current Tai Chi teacher back in November.
So I'll take a pause here because just earlier today I was in communication with Ren's circle, or Lou Reed's circle actually, because Lou Reed's coming out with a new book, posthumous book, Art of the Straight Line, My Tai Chi, which is based on Lou's art and his writings, and then all the people around him who experienced him as a Tai Chi player. So I have like a little 3-page thing in there, as well as like Iggy Pop and just all these crazy, Laurie Anderson, of course, his wife does a lot of the curating of it all, and there's just all the amazing people. Master Ren is of course part of it because he went on a tour with Lou Reed, and one of the things that just tickled my heart is so many of the photos Lou has our Got Chi t-shirts on. So it's just like,
I represent.
he bless Lou Reed. I mean, he was a great one. I remember when he came to our 10th anniversary, and a lot of people in the Southern Chinese and mainland Chinese circles that were part of our family back then didn't really know who Lou Reed was. They weren't either hip to music or, they were immigrants. They didn't know what Velvet Underground. They didn't know any of that stuff. Warhol, all those years, they had no idea. I mean, I just try to explain "Take a Walk on the Wild Side" to them and what that song really means. But
how do you translate "Godfather of Punk" into Chinese? Right. What are the characters for that?
Right. And Lou is very, Lou had a reputation of being like a hardened New Yorker and a very difficult interview. Mm-hmm. So the first time I got to meet him, it was like I said something that put him off. I remember they had just come out with that DVD with Ren, and they had done that flipper vision where they had taken individual shots of Ren doing the Tai Chi, black and white still photos, and then kind of shuttered them so they gave him motion, and Lou put the soundtrack to it. And I watched the video, but I just kind of like watched it very passively. And I said something to that effect that didn't come off right with Lou, and Lou was getting all kind of huffy and pissed off. And I was like, oh no, I just Reed. What a dumb thing to do. But then I mentioned that one part of it. I said, that was art. That was something you could put in a gallery. And Lou just softened up and I think he really loved to talk about Tai Chi. One time he invited Gigi and I to a show he did with the bass player Rob Wasserman. It was just a 2-man show at I think that was at the Fox in Redwood City. And so we go backstage, and I work in the music industry, so I'm pretty conversant in how to go backstage and stuff. And I was actually a big fan of Rob Wasserman too, so it was kind of a joy to meet him and shake his hand. But we're in back, and we're kind of in our little corner, and Lou's there, and he's like literally holding court, like anybody who's the performer, the talent would be backstage, and all these people around him. And at one point, you know, G's kind of like, well, what you do? I feel kind of awkward here. I'm like, we'll just chill out and we'll see what happens. I mean, there wasn't like a lot of, it was a small house, so it wasn't like a big entourage. And at one point, Lou looks up and spots us, abandons his entourage, walks over to us, pulls up a chair, sits down in front of us, and just wanted to talk Tai Chi.
Wow.
I mean, he had such love for the art. And I think most people, you know, when they talk to Lou, you want to talk to Lou Reed about music or punk or the art scene in New York, what have you, right? But Lou had such passion for Tai Chi, and not many people understood that, you know, and wouldn't really want to. They would talk to him about it like a novelty, you know. Oh yeah, that's cute, you do Tai Chi, but he was a very serious practitioner, and really worked at it. One of the things that Laurie Anderson shared with us after he passed was that Tai Chi was one of the last things he did. You know, he like, when he was literally on his deathbed, he got up and went through his form.
Wow.
You know, and so it's just like, wow, you know, that's some serious dedication.
That's deep.
So anyways, look for the book. I think it comes out in March.
Oh, nice.
I'm sure Kung Fu Magazine will have information on it.
Definitely. That's great. And yeah, Wu Xiao Man said he didn't know that about Lou Reed. And good to see you, Wu Xiao Man. I've seen you commenting in the social media for Shadow Ghost. I think we talked once. He said something like, "Oh, I said it has a little bit of a tokusatsu, kung fu, and comic books." And he goes, "I like all those things." I said, "Me too." So it's good to see him in the chat.
Yeah, like I was telling Patrick before you came in, Wu Xiao Man is my nephew, my adopted nephew from Immortal Studios.
Oh, okay.
Last San Diego Comic-Con, we went down and we're working for Immortal together, and that's where we connected. We shared a room one night because of some room kerfuffle, and it turned out to be really delightful because the two of us are just huge kung fu nerds and kaiju nerds, and you know, tokusatsu. We went all off on tokusatsu, so you know, we just nerded out all night. But he started calling me uncle, so I figured I better call him nephew. You know, I should mention, actually, I was just well, I can't. There's a big announcement coming down the pipes from Immortal Studios.
Oh, nice.
I can't tell you guys what it is because, you know, it's NDA right now.
Sure.
And Wu Xiao Man is putting together an event, a private event coming up. I think Martial Arts Museum. But anyways, unfortunately I can't make it, Brian. I really wish I could make it, but you know, that's a bad weekend for me. Where's you gonna go with that? Oh yeah, so Immortal just put up. You know, Immortal's CEO or president is Peter Xiao, who's the son of Xiao Yi, who's one of the major wuxia novelists back in the day. And you know, I'd actually never read any of his works because they've not been translated. That's one of the projects that Immortal's working on as well. In fact, one of the comic stories is an update of an original Xiao Yi story, and they just recently put on their channel up Beautiful Swordswoman, which Wu Xiao Man did a review of
Nice.
a while back. But I just watched that last night, or it was the night before, and it's a 1969 Taiwan kung fu movie, and I mean, it's kind of, you know, it's certainly dated. The kung fu isn't great. The storyline now feels old, but back then must have just been revolutionary. You know, female heroes and just it displays a lot of kind of classic kung fu movie tropes. But back then in '69, that would have been some of the first times that they had been exposed. So they weren't quite cliches yet, right? And it's brutal. It's like there's some things in that just hung with me. You know, it's really bloody. I mean, it's not bloody like Lone Wolf and Cub, but it's headed that direction. Sure. And there's like baby killing. Like a guy takes a baby and throws it down on the ground. And just, what? Guy like takes a blind man and throws him against a post and cracks his skull, and just, you know, merciless wanton rape, and just like, man, China was bad back then.
What I love about the wuxia genre, right? The heroes are really heroic, and the villains are really villainous. I mean, like they're not just like your run of the mill villain, you know?
Yeah, and I think also there's a lot of characters that are very gray too. That they're, they're heroic, but they have tragic flaws, like they're drunks or they're bullies or they're just boorish oafs. They're so strong they just shatter everything, kind of like a Hulk concept. It definitely feels like a precursor in many ways to the comic mythology that's being built now.
Oh yeah.
It's just an earlier iteration of that, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. But
Well, we have a question here from Yan Mo. Why does there seem to be a more quantity of martial arts cinema in Chinese culture and more quantity of martial arts graphics, animation in Japanese culture?
I'll take a stab at that. I think one of the things that's a major influence in Chinese martial arts cinema and Chinese martial arts in general, which people often disregard, is the impact of opera. So live Chinese opera has incredible demonstrations of martial arts and is deeply connected to cinema. Bruce Lee's parents were opera people. Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, Yun Biao, Yun Wu Ping, all those guys are trained in opera school, right? Opera style. That's what they can do, And so there was already this deep tradition of very acrobatic, very flamboyant fight choreography that was built into classical Chinese opera. And I don't know if you ever had the opportunity to search Chinese opera fight scenes. There's some just amazing demonstrations, like Monkey King, and some of the fighting's amazing. It's really, and they're doing it live, and they're doing it in these outrageous costumes that must be so bulky. That's real kung fu. That's amazing skills, and so that has this great tradition of that builds into sort of a more visual retelling, like more movie choreography. Whereas in the Japanese side, if you look at particularly ukiyo, that style of art, which was the floating world, this sort of woodblock base, very, it really looks like comic book art in a way. Heavy outlines, color patterns inside, vibrant, a lot of emphasis on figure and ground in this sort of very, now comic books are everywhere and all different styles of medium, of course. I'm kind of generalizing to the early stuff, right? And the more how would I put it, more classic or more primordial? No, that's not the word.
Formative,
very good. Exactly. The formative stuff really feels like ukiyo. And so I think you can draw a direct line from ukiyo to what happens into anime, and from there also what happens into tokusatsu and what happens into chanbara or jidaigeki movies. I was watching. What was I watching? This, I think it's called Samurai Spy. It's an old black and white samurai film from a director I wasn't familiar with, and none of the actors I was familiar with. And it was just in Criterion Collection, and so I thought I'd watch it because it'd been in my queue forever, and I had like exactly an hour and a half to watch this hour and a half movie. So I watched it, and it was absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. The way every shot was filmed. And one of the things I've always argued is that when people were making black and white films, they understood how black and white worked. And you look at movies now where they're making, black and white films. It's like, you guys don't get it. You're still making color films. You just drop that black and white filter on it, Whereas you look at like these classic black and white films, their manipulation of light and dark is just beautiful, just exquisite. And this film had like every frame. I was just like, my God, that is a beautifully composed frame. And I would, or at least my simplification of it is I would attribute that to the style of ukiyo art, of no theater, of it just fits better into that general Japanese cultural motif of how things are composed. It's very orderly. It's very, it combines the linearity of architecture with the natural flowiness of nature in this harmonious way that is so fundamental in Japanese art and culture. And so, that's my stab at it.
Well, one thing that what you said brought something to mind was back when I was, in art school at the School of Visual Arts, right? One of my teachers was Carmen Infantino, right? So Kurtis, you might recognize the name. He's the comic book artist who put the yellow oval on the Batman symbol, right?
Wow.
He's the guy who designed the Flash's red outfit. So when I was taking some sequential art classes with him, one of the things that he would have us do is watch like 20 minutes of an Alfred Hitchcock movie so that we could like really dial into like the black and white composition of each panel and how to like move the eye around. And so he would, you know, Psycho or, you know, any other, you know, North by Northwest, and he would just play like a, you know, 10 minutes of it, and then we'd have to break it down into comic panels to like figure out how to tell a story, but how much the composition, that black and white composition, told the story. So that's my little comic anecdote to mix in, to throw in the mix there, Kurtis.
Oh, totally. And you know, I was just talking with some of my friends who are directors and animation, because I was watching a bunch of black and white films the other day, and it was it's like, you know what the thing is their influences weren't film. Their influences were fine art, were theater, and those
exactly.
And so it's that idea that everything old is new again, you know. And to wrap that full circle with martial arts, it's funny because nowadays MMA, of course, and for a long time now has been prevalent. But what you're starting to see is techniques that at one point were deemed unrealistic, not usable.
Wouldn't work in the cage.
And they're starting to do it. And it's like, wow, I remember the first time I saw what they call an oblique kick. And I was like, oh, that's from Lao Gakyu. And like, oh, they just figured that out, you know? So obviously somebody went back in time centuries ago to ancient China, and, you know, no, somebody from ancient China came to the present day and stole it, you know, and went back. But everything old is new again. You know, palm strikes are starting to show up, you know, can you believe it? You know, so there's so much to be said for the old things that you can learn from, you know, and, you know, there's no need to reinvent it. You just got to look back a little bit. So
for sure.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
the challenge. I mean, that's sort of the wealth of culture, right? Of history. You know, that there's so much there. Every problem that we've engaged is not necessarily novel, because maybe bots on Facebook is kind of novel, but I don't know, man.
All right. I want to change things up just a little bit. I have a surprise guest who's joining us specifically to ask the Kung Fu Masters. I've been trying to find someone who might be able to stump one or both of you with their questions. And so let me invite.
Wait, that's the Kung Fu Master. This is the Kung Fu writer who pretends to be the. I'm a master in magazine.
You both outrank me, so
shoot. Ask us your question. We're not afraid. Donovan.
Hello.
How are you, buddy?
Whoa.
So
and Patrick's hiding behind his. Oh, there it goes.
There. Well, anyway, so first let me introduce you to an old friend of mine, Donovan, who appears on. You might recognize him because he appears on, I think it was page 60 of volume 1 of A Tiger's Tale.
Okay.
He's one of a small number of backers who opted for a very specific tier. Don't worry, Donovan, I have it right here.
All right.
And if my skills are still reliable, I could just flip to the page.
That's right. Training in the temple.
I love that.
Right.
It's just like, yay.
So, Donovan, this is your chance to stump the Kung Fu Masters with your questioning skills.
Wow, that's an interesting challenge. By the way, just really quick, you know, you guys were talking about the media differences between, you know, the written stuff, the comics, manga in Japan, and well, anyways, Mike, I had a question here. So there were a ton of samurai films, right? That's a martial art. I mean, Akira Kurosawa was huge.
Sure.
And it seems like there was something going on there too, maybe with the Chinese Cultural Revolution, that destroyed maybe the written word was a lot more, the comic stuff might have been more controlled.
Most of the stuff that was coming out, most of what we think of classic kung fu movies, like the golden era, 70s, 80s, films were coming out of Hong Kong and Taiwan. So that wasn't part of mainland China.
Mm.
Right? I mean, Jackie Chan, Chow Yun-fat, those guys are all Hong Kong, right?
Gotcha.
Mainlander, Jet Li is a mainlander. Bruce Lee, Hong Kong and America. He's San Franciscan, man. He's a San Franciscan guy, So
Were the comics industry just not as big? Like maybe it was the kids.
I don't know what the comics industry was in mainland China. That's a very good question. I know it was very big in Hong Kong and Taiwan, and there were serials that ran in the newspapers. In fact, a lot of the wuxia novels, literature, and stuff, Jin Yong, wuxia, called here, his stuff all started as sort of serial stories in a newspaper. He was actually a newspaper man, and that what we read as the books now are actually collections of those articles, and it sort of spirals out of the tradition of traditional storytelling. So if you look at the classics like Journey to the West or Romance of the Three Kingdoms or Outlaws of the Marsh, those are three of the four great classics of Chinese literature. They're all told in this way that at the end of every chapter, the story will say something like, "And you want to know what happens next? Well, you'll just have to read the next chapter." And what actually that's saying is what was happening was the storyteller was like, "Do you want to know what happens? You'll come back next week, and I will tell you more story, and you will pay me more money, and come back to the market next week. I'll tell you the story. Same bat time, same bat channel." So it's kind of like, it's kind of the way it was built in. I really am not sensitive to what was going on in mainland China. Cinematically, there's actually a large amount of Chinese film that's just starting to emerge, mainland China. And that is made. I mean, a lot of it's propagandist, but it's just starting to emerge, and I've yet really to tap what is in there because there's just so much of it. Because right now, like if you get into, we were talking to Brian Chansey earlier, Wuxia Man, who's like the king of this. This is where he, there's some point where somebody like put you to shame. This is where he put me to shame. Is he knew all of the TV shows, and there's so many TV shows in coming out of China, coming out of Taiwan, coming out of Hong Kong that are telling these stories again and again, different versions of them. But God, I haven't watched them. I mean, Curtis, you were recommending that to me. What was it? That Heaven's Sword.
Oh, Heaven's Sword, Dragon Saber. That's Jin Yong.
The Jin Yong story, right?
Jin Yong story. Yeah.
It was shot.
Yeah, and I would say, about the comic book, maybe something to consider too is the history, right? So comic books, of course, Native American, not Native American, natively an American art form, right? So you figure that's where the inception was from, and then you look at historically the turmoil that was going on in China, and by the time the Cultural Revolution hit, I think that art form, that American art form, had a really hard time penetrating, whereas places like Hong Kong and places where American servicemen or other people would be frequenting, that part of the culture would have made their way there. So Japan, the manga, and then of course Taiwan, Hong Kong, manhwa or what have you. So I think it may have, I don't know the exact timeline, but that may have something to do with why you didn't really see it perpetuate in mainland China, because by the time it probably would have gotten there, the war and Cultural Revolution would already be hitting. So that's my take on it. Yeah.
I think it's there now, though. I think it's starting to blossom now. And, just for Chinese New Year, I went out to see The Wandering Earth Part 2, which is actually it's actually the prequel.
Oh, okay.
Because if you remember the end of Wandering Earth, it kind of ends.
yeah.
But I don't want to spoil anything. But and that actually, I saw it downtown, and that actually was, so Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year is a major film rush in Asia, just like, Thanksgiving, Christmas is in our area. It's actually bigger in Asia as New Year's. And I remember, I'd hear about the latest Jackie Chan movie because Jackie Chan dominated it for many years back in the 80s. And, hear about it like, oh man, that sounds so good. I want to see that movie. And I'd have to wait, months to get like some crappy VCD version or a, fifth generation duped VHS version of it. And now, Wandering Earth 2, I got to see it the same day that China got to see it in a theater, full on theater, and it was so worth it because it was actually filmed for IMAX.
Wow.
So Wandering Earth is on Netflix. The first part, the first one, the first film. This is pretty cool. So I don't know how that works, but and when I saw it on Netflix, I thought, yeah, okay, that was kind of it's a big film, and there's a lot of kind of sci-fi concepts that I think got overwhelmed me in a bit. But I thought, oh man, that's not going to hold up. Those effects can't be that good. But then seeing Wandering Earth 2 on the big screen, the effects are really good.
Nice.
There's some really good stuff in there.
And that was called Wandering Earth.
The Wandering Earth. Yeah, it's by and note the author. It's a noted science fiction author called Liu Cixin, who also wrote a serial called the I think it's a short story called The Three Body Problem.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Like,
yeah, it's a Nebular Winter.
Everybody keeps raving about that book. Like,
yeah, they're making a Netflix series out of it now. So I think honestly, Asian science fiction is coming around something fierce.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like Jung Yi just premiered on Netflix, and I found that film very entertaining. I mean, even though it was sort of a mishmash of a lot of classic sci-fi tropes, a lot of cliches, like K-film often does. It took a lot of elements I was familiar with, mixed them together, and came out with something really new and really unusually human, and it's a story about androids and battle bots and stuff. But I recommend that. That was a good one.
Really reminds me of Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's like, holy
that
crap! That was an awesome movie.
Yeah, that just like everything was in there.
Right?
That just blew me out.
Okay, here's a question for Gene, and then I want to ask Kurtis a question. I see Dali sitting in the background. I love Dali. That is in Salvador, obviously. It's something else.
No, it's Dali.
Oh,
all right. You guys got to see this. My daughter gave me this. So this is the Salvador Dali cookbook. He designed a cookbook. It's absolutely beautiful. So it has his artwork through it. Crazy artwork.
Wow.
Oh my God. Man.
Really absurd
recipes. Just a little bit higher on the screen if you could.
Oh my God, look at that.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Wow.
The recipes are genuine,
Wow.
If you dare.
Yeah. Crazy, Dali.
All right. Cool. So then I noticed that Kurtis has some freaking amazing artwork back there too. What's that painting on the wall?
Oh yeah, these are like old iron etching, like British ironing etching, So yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah. See, so they get like a steel plate, and then they take like a tool, and then they score it, repeatedly into this kind of print, and then they put ink on it and then put it down. So it's kind of going back to graphic art, comic books. I mean, that's kind of the
old school.
Yeah, old school. That'd be the Western equivalent. Yeah.
So what are you guys are both, Kung Fu guys. What is your favorite art that you do? Do you do something creative that's like, Gene, you're a writing guy, but do you guys paint? Do you do calligraphy? Do you do
one of my New Year's resolutions this year is to start sketching more. I've always sketched a little bit. I mean, not like these two, but I've always sketched a little bit. I kind of put a lot of that aside when I started really focusing on writing, and I'm trying to kind of get back to it. I'm trying to just make a space, like, okay, every week draw something, but it hasn't happened yet. But I've got a whole year to fulfill that. I used to paint, but
yeah.
You did do the cover art for the Klingon combat manual, though.
Ooh, so, that's right. But that was primarily Photoshop. That was an early Photoshop adventure. I did the cover art for some of the Sierra Club catalogs, and I did probably the most art I was doing was when I was working for the Armory, which was a sword making group. that was a division of American Fencer Supply, and we were medieval in all sorts of ways. In the fact that this was before computers had dominated how it was produced, and so my boss was producing our catalog xerographically, and he had me hand draw every product that we made. And there was a couple actually good reasons for that. Like one thing is fencing uniforms are white, and it's really hard to shoot them because they all look exactly the same. So if we drew them, then you could actually draw out the stitching. But it meant that because summers was kind of a slow season for us, because fencing kind of follows the collegiate year. At least back then it did. Now it's a little different. But to keep me underemployed, I was sent to this one upstairs room, what we called the cage, because it was our locked room with all of our best swords. And I would draw swords. I did that for a couple summers.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Curtis, what about you?
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as art, I actually started as a professional artist, so comic books, video games, animation, all that stuff, and then took some time off to become a kung fu instructor, and then brought it back to do my current project, which I have a campaign for. So doing a kung fu comic book now called Shadow Ghost. So that's comic books will probably be my favorite, hands down, because it just encompasses everything, and you can make a movie with your phone and stuff like that. I mean, the playing field's been leveled, but comic books are just so democratized. You can do something at the level with enough skill at the level of something very professional or a company as an individual, doing comic books, So like I told you, comic books commercially as a mainstream industry is having issues now, the independent space is starting to blossom, But like I told you, my goal is to get the word out about Kung Fu. So I'm taking two kind of archaic art forms that young people aren't interested in to try and, make something very positive. So hopefully we'll see how that goes, But yeah, definitely comic books. Comic books is my main thing. So.
Okay, I'm trying to stump the Kung Fu masters here.
Just don't ask me any questions about accounting. That I'm stumped already. So.
What is the oldest form of comic, or it's kind of proto-cinema? Have you guys ever? Goes back to caveman days. There's a movie about it. Werner Herzog.
You're talking about the Cave of Forgotten Dreams. But before we segue there, I just want to give Curtis a quick update that he currently has 47 backers and is at $2,637.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So, maybe that combination of two archaic forms is maybe you're onto something there. There
you go. Thank you. Thanks to everybody for backing. Definitely.
If you haven't seen Cave of Forgotten Dreams, got to check it out. It's like 30,000-year-old cave drawings, and they got this there's a woolly mammoth that has the really long, a woolly rhino. So it has the really long horn, and on the side of each of the horns are these lines, like you see in comics.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a torch, it looks like it's moving.
Wow.
So yeah, check out Werner Herzog's Cave of Forgotten Dreams.
Sure. That's
cool.
cool.
You dig it, Gene and Curtis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Storytelling.
What is your? Wow, this is funny. Try to stump. Okay, so what did Bodhidharma do with his eyelids?
Well, sorry, what did you say? Do with his what?
What did Bodhidharma do with his eyelids that was really kind of important to Chinese culture?
Oh, well, there's the big myth of him falling asleep while meditating, getting upset, tearing off his eyelids, and throwing them down to the ground where they sprouted the first tea plants, and that's why he looks so bug-eyed in a lot of pictures. The interesting thing about that is that Wudang, Shaolin and the Wutang, Wudang has a parallel myth with Zhen Wu, who is their patron saint. Jen Wu is the dark warrior. And Jen Wu was so upset because his stomach was gurgling when he's trying to meditate. They tore his stomach intestines out and threw them on the ground. And the stomach becomes a terrapin, a turtle. And the snake becomes, the intestines become a snake. And that's one of the symbols of Wudang, is the snake wrapped around the turtle.
Oh.
A lot of times in modern Tai Chi, as it's moved with the diaspora, we think of the crane and the snake as the Tai Chi symbols, but that's a little antiquated. Really, if you go to Wudangshan, it's all about the snake and the turtle, or the snake and the terrapin. And there's Mayor Shahar, who's a scholar that did a book on Shaolin Temple, Shaolin Monastery, theorizes or postulates that that Wudang was set up in sort of a contradiction or an opposing theory that was indigenous versus Bodhidharma's story and Shaolin, which was imported, right? Because Buddhism isn't Chinese. Buddhism comes from India. And he pushes to the point, and this is kind of funny because when you start taking this from a scholarly standpoint, it holds up really well. But when in Chinese martial arts, we separate hard versus soft, internal versus external. And so Shaolin is the external style, even though we have internal style. Tai Chi is an internal style, it's soft art. But what he theorizes was external actually meant imported, right? Because it's Buddhist and a Buddhist tradition, it's not genuinely Chinese. It is an import. And internal means, indigenous. Taoism is indigenously Chinese. Tai Chi, Chinese. And so it could be that, we generally think of this whole like internal power, external power being the fists and the elbows and head and knees and being the external part. Internal is generating the chi and be able to project that out. And that's what we generally think about internal and external. But if you take it from this other perspective, that internal and external are separations between indigenous and foreign imports into China, it's a very interesting perspective, very interesting way to look at Chinese martial arts and what is generally held as our accepted paradigm may in fact be kind of a mythological thing. Because on the ultimate end, it doesn't make a difference. I mean, for example, Kurtis is a proponent of Hungga, which is a very external style. But on its highest level, what do you got? Iron wire, iron thread. I don't know what you use, but that's internal, right? And so in the end, it's all the same. All the different roads up the mountain, whether you're internal or external, doesn't really matter. Just how you approach in, or what part of the foothills of the mountain that you get on. But eventually, it all meets at the top. And that ultimately is the lesson of the yin yang. By the way, Kurtis, I really wanted to commend you on that yin yang symbol that you have.
Thank you.
The animation. I've seen so many variations. Of the yin yang, and there are so many of them are just stupid. One, it's like, oh, we're going to make the yin bigger or something. It's like, no, that messes up the whole thing. But that thing, it's just like, I look at it and it just trips me out. It's like looking at fractal art.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so it's this thing right here. Yeah.
Oh, that way.
Yeah, that way. Yeah. But yeah, no, that was like, I mean, that took a long time. The whole goal was like, as a comic book fan, I wanted to have that symbol, that icon, right? Like the Batman symbol. That's got to be the yin yang. But my gosh, has that played out, right? And,
right.
So I spent like months, seriously, just months, like drawing different versions, and then it was just like I was just being too clever for my own good. And what happened was that whole idea of the microcosm and macrocosm, right?
Yeah,
so
I totally see that.
So it's like, what if I take that swirl and push that in?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, Lisa's here. Lisa, how's it going?
It has like this wonderful sort of almost hokusai wave quality to it.
Oh yeah, it's
being static. It's still very dynamic.
Oh,
yeah.
Excellent work, sir.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
It really has the flow. Looks like you want to say hi to Lisa.
Oh yeah, definitely. Thanks. Yeah, Lisa's one of my Tai Chi students from Texas. So I teach online now, And Lisa's been studying with me for quite some time now and just doing a remarkable job. Just super supportive, super into it. And we just did Tai Chi tonight. So speaking of the yin yang symbol, we did that. So good to see you, Lisa.
Can I say something about the yin yang symbol? Sorry, Patrick, could you bring that back up for a second?
Yeah, sure. Here we go.
So one of the things that I think that is missed so easily in this is the circle that makes them one. Right? Like most people don't think about the black circle around the edge that makes it one.
Yeah.
They always look at the inside symbols. It seems like it took me a long time to really understand that they're just one. They're not two.
Yeah, it's that totality, right? That's kind of the thing I love about it's like a riddle. The symbol itself, it's like a riddle.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And actually, terminologically, is that a word? It's actually called, the symbol's called the Tai Chi 2. Yin yang is the two components of the Tai Chi, and Tai Chi has been conventionally translated as grand ultimate, like Tai Chi Chuan, grand ultimate fist, which kind of works, but is a little laborious in my sense. It really, Tai Chi is really talking about polarities, right? So it's sure, that's the grand ultimate, but it's like the two polarities, which are yin and yang, right? And so Tai Chi is a philosophy first. It's a Taoist perspective, a Taoist viewpoint, before it's a martial art. The martial art is more an expression of the Taoist concept of Tai Chi, just like Taoist music is an expression of Tai Chi or whatever, or Taoist art has those same elements. But it is first and foremost sort of a cosmological, philosophical viewpoint perspective.
What was the origin? When was the first time that kind of became a thing, like originated? Like, do they have?
Okay, you stumped me on that one. I'd have to Wikipedia. It's old. It's very old. The Tai Chi 2 goes back really, and there's more primordial versions of it. It evolves into what we conventionally think about. And just I think right now we're looking at the next evolutionary step, mutation that Sifu Fujita has put together.
Yeah, I want to echo Yan Mo, who says if it's a fractal, then go down a few levels. I was talking with Kurtis when he first revealed that he could turn that into like an infinite zoom with just very little, just a little bit of effort. You could just fall into it, and then it would repeat itself, and you can fall in deeper, and those elements would still be there.
Yep.
That's good design.
Yep. And then set that to some great, dubstep music. Slap that puppy on TikTok, and there's your fundraiser right there.
I think we just got our first stretch goal right here. So thank you. But no, I appreciate, you don't have to go too far into it, but I spent so long developing all the stuff for Shadow Ghost, and Gene saw like me showing him on my phone at Comic-Con. Look at this. But I had this thing I held on to for like years, and I had this thing. I was like, oh, I'm really happy. I enjoy it, but I just didn't want to reveal it until the time was right. So it's so fun I'm so glad you guys like it, because I've been holding on to that for quite a while. So thank you.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. Well, at least I got close to something.
Yeah, we'll give you credit for that.
Yeah.
Just ask me numbers, and then I'm kind of lost.
Well, it's a testament to your honesty, Gene, that you didn't just make something up.
Tempting, always tempting.
Definitely.
So I do have to go, but it's been very nice to
nice to meet you.
Yeah. Hey, Donovan, just to put a bug in your ear, we're doing the Tiger Claw League Championship again for it's May 6th and 7th, right after Cinco de Mayo.
Nice.
At the same bad place, same bad time. But I'm putting together a Wild Aid crew because Wild Aid lost their traveling people over the pandemic. They had to do some cutbacks. But I've already got a point person. My daughter actually stepped forward and said she'll point person the table. And I'm looking to put some people around her. So if you got some time that weekend, you were great at the Wild Aid table that many years ago. I don't know about that sparing trick, but it was a great idea.
Yeah, that was.
But the sleight of hand thing he did with his elephant to give us spiel.
Yeah, I
But,
promise
think
I'll
about
do
it.
it right this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Practice
We'll hook you up if you're interested.
Okay, cool.
Another chance to save the elephants.
Woohoo!
Fight the good fight, man.
Yeah. Ciao for now.
All right, take care. Bye.
It would be more fun if he was like in a luchador mask or something.
I think everything's better.
Donovan, man.
Yeah, the masked questioner. Oh, he could.
Right.
He does a great generic authority figure cosplay. You know, with the mirror glasses and the hat, and you know,
I could see that. Yeah, he could pull that off.
his go-to hat is the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
Right.
But, you know, most people have a visceral reaction to all 3-letter, you know, hats, I suppose. But, yeah, fun.
Love. Very good. Well, it was funny. One thing you were talking about, Gene, about like the kind of mistranslation or misinterpretation of things, right? And then it kind of lives on. We were talking about Hongga. I remember there's Wang Feihong, the famous, Kung Fu person. Supposedly he had these thing called it's properly translated as I understand the 9 unique fists, right? The 9 unique techniques, but it got mistranslated as the 9 poisonous hands, and I personally like the mispronunciation or the mistranslation way more. I think 9 poisonous hands is just so much cooler. That's one that I want us to let pass because it just sounds way cooler, you know?
Yeah, that's very Shaw Brothers.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's something to be said for mistranslations too. I mean, I think, well, was it Lord Anderson said the language is a virus, you know, it's constantly mutating.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, now I think the term that we're using for Tai Chi in America is really describing Qigong. That's what people want it to be. They really don't want Tai Chi Chuan. They really don't want the fist.
Yeah.
You know, they want Qigong. They want energy work. They want meditation, which is great too. You know, I mean, I do Qigong every day. In fact, I'm overdue. I got to do it today. But, you know, that's what people are seeking when they think the term Tai Chi, and not this whole like, oh yeah, Chin-Na technique, fighting technique. Which hands, that's not. And so I think when people kind of get into it, there becomes this kind of unusual, I don't know, there's an issue there in our Tai Chi culture that needs to be resolved. I think where we're seeing that foremost, well, not now, but we kind of stopped during the pandemic, was with push hands tournaments, because there's like 2 clusters of push hands people. One cluster where, you know, push the other guy down or pull them down. Wherever it goes down, and that, you know, became very wrestly and like sumo, as if you should disrespect sumo. I mean, sumo is one of the most hardcore sports I've ever seen. Man, those guys are ridiculous. But anyways, then there's this other school that thinks it should all be internal. It should be all soft, you know. And I get that, you know, but.
Well, I want to just spotlight Andrew Scott, another old friend. Gene, you've met him at one time in the past, but he was one of my Wuxia Warrior supporters. The great story with Andrew Scott is that while he was, you know, he was an early backer for the Wuxia Warrior tier of my campaign, but he picked up the Gene Ching the moment I started writing about it, and he's been doing it every day since.
Nice.
Nice.
So he wants to ask Gene to talk more about the distinctions between Tai Chi and Qigong, having spent about a year doing it.
Okay, so in a nutshell, Tai Chi is short for Tai Chi Chuan, and Chuan is a term that literally translates as fist, but we use it at the end of any martial art. So Hongga Kyun is Hongjia Chuan in Mandarin. Shaolin Chuan is a fist, you know. Any style you could put, you know, Tanlang Chuan is a mantis style. So that means it's a martial art. Qigong has martial arts expressions. Hard Qigong, that's like guys are like breaking stuff on their head and taking kicks to the crotch. that's hard qigong. That's martial qigong. And in every martial art, there is an expression of qi because it's your vitality. That's how you move your qi is critical in martial arts. But there is forms of qigong that have no martial arts stuff in it whatsoever. So there's, like health and longevity qigong. For example, like my daily practice is 8-section brocade. And that's really, there is a horse stance in it. There's some slow motion punching, but it's not done specifically for martial arts. It's done for health. There's projecting qigong, which is like the faith healers who can actually, and to some degree, acupuncturists are qi projectors because they project through the needle. In fact, one of my classmates, he is the dean of 5 branches university here, and a major Chinese medicine and acupuncture school in the United States. And he was telling me how when there's an expression of qi when people needle people, when the people that really have qi do it right, the needle stands in a certain way and there's an aesthetic to it. But when you do it wrong, it's like it's not all crooked and all off, but it's like an aesthetic that you can see. Just like when you get skills in martial arts, you can look at another martial arts performance and kind of get a sense of where they're at, where their strength is. You understand how they move their energy. And so there are many different forms of qigong. There's also religious qigong. So that's like Buddhist Taoist stuff where you're seeking enlightenment. It's a path to enlightenment. And mind you, all these divisions are somewhat artificial and very gray in some places because it doesn't fit in the kind of boxes. And this is probably the classic East meets West problem, is you can't always put it in the same box. It's not always X equals X. Qi, good Lord. I mean, we've been trying to translate qi for 20 years working on the magazine, Patrick and I, and the rest of our crew. And we came to so many translations. We worked with so many people that had different ideas what it was. And ultimately, qi is qi. You can't really put it into Western words eloquently. You can.
There's not even a Photoshop filter for it.
Right. That's what I want. Qi, and get this beautiful aura and all powerful. Yeah.
So Andrew's totally engaged, right? He's mentions how the Qigong's been part of his healing journey, right? And he has, do you have any tips?
Oh, you do Gene Ching. Good for you. I love you, Gene Ching. When I first went to Shaolin Temple, that was when I wanted to learn. Because, that's like Bodhidharma's one, it's a Shaolin one. And my teacher was like, 8-section brocade first. And it was kind of like, I know a brocade, okay, do the brocade, whatever. And he actually took me up on one of Song Mountain's peaks, and we did it there. So that was really cool, actually. It was a great lesson. But that became my practice. I have learned Yi Jing from him in successive years and from other Shaolin monks, and I never followed through on it, which is my fault, my loss. I only could keep so many forms, and that one didn't stick because I didn't have regular instruction in it. But it is a very powerful form. How to do it every day, or tips and risks. Tips with Qigong: do it every day. Even if you're, some people say don't do it when you're sick. Okay, maybe if you're really sick, if you got COVID, maybe don't do it. But if you're not feeling it, if you're hungover, I still did Qigong when I was hungover. Didn't do it rigorously, but it was important to get that Qi moving, or whatever. I mean, as long as it's not, something life-threatening. Risks. What's challenging about risks is it is a repeated motion, and because it's a defined sequence, and this is me talking personally. I think you need to move beyond sort of, and this is very, very unorthodox perhaps, but so like I learned 8-section program. I learned many versions of 8-section brocade, and I would take and piece together, and because there's so many, it's one of the most popular forms of Qigong, and we did, I don't know, like half a dozen articles on it, and I had several different masters teach me their form, and I would keep parts I liked. And at one point, it got to the point where I was doing like it was like a 16-section brocade because I amalgamated all these other things. And then my Shaolin master who taught me original Shi the Tongue, he's like, "Oh, you just go back. Here's the original one. Here's what I learned from my master." And I went back to that and doing that, and it's all fine. But my lesson in there is that Yi Jing Jing 2 also has many different versions. So what I would do in terms of tips and risks is explore those other versions. Be true to whatever your version is that you first learn, but look at those other versions because they're getting at the same thing. And there's lessons in there that may be missing from what your teacher passed on to you. Maybe your teacher didn't know. Maybe he did know, didn't tell you. Maybe, you just didn't listen. I don't know. But I mean, it's kind of like, I know Kurtis does this. When he looks at Hongga, he's got his lineage through YC Wong, which he's loyal to. But at the same time, there's so many other people do Hongga. And whenever there's a Hongga set, I guarantee you Kurtis is checking it out. Like, okay, that's different. Why does he do it that way? And he'll be processing it, because ultimately it's your practice. It's not your teacher's practice. And so you need to keep working on it. Don't let it get stale. Keep polishing it and keep, be open to it. Be open to and flexible, because like I said, it is a repeated motion, and the chance of repeated stress injuries is something we all have to deal with in the martial arts, specifically if you're like I do a lot of sword, and I got to be very careful not to blow my tennis elbow. I've got sword elbow. It goes with me like every year. So I just got to balance that. Right. What'd you say, Kurtis? Was that?
Well, just to elaborate and kind of, like you're talking about, like, definitely when I look at people from other lineages, I watch them, and you would think that because I've learned this one lineage, that I would be beholden to that lineage only. And when I see other people do it, oh, that's wrong. But actually, some of my favorite practitioners of Hongga, other than my teacher, will be people from outside my lineage, because it's not really about the technique. It's about the concept and the quality of movement. And that's what's universal, right? And so I learn more from somebody that's different than me than I learn from somebody that's like me. It's like our differences bring us together more than our similarities, and the common thing that I see with a lot of traditional Kung Fu people, and I know people in the East Coast here, wherever, is that this idea that sometimes people will study with the Sifu early on in the career, and then the Sifu will develop the art in a different direction as he gets older. And there's a group of students that will often say, well, I'm doing it the way it's supposed to be done. This is the way Sifu taught it when I learned it before you were here, how many decades before. And I was talking to a friend from the East Coast, and he says, yeah, I have a similar problem. He says, what his Sifu told him is, he goes, you learn from me 30 years later when I have 30 years more experience, 30 years more insight, where I've developed 30 years more. Why would you want to learn from me 30 years ago when I didn't have those insights? I've been developing, I've been changing. Why would you want to go back to that? I don't want to go back to that. And that's such a thing. We have this whole thing about being beholden to tradition, but sometimes it can become an issue, So that's kind of, to elaborate on that, I think regardless of what practice. And I see Lisa's commenting here, and Lisa says, I thought that at first too, but once Sifu showed the practical application of Qi in self-defense, Tai Chi as a whole made a lot more sense to me. And I think what Lisa's touching upon is this idea of the Qi. We were talking about the difference between internal and external. The Qi isn't, you're always doing Qi Gong, whether you know it or not. It's just if you're focusing on it. You can't live without breath, and you can't live without Qi, right? So you're always doing it. And it's the understanding of integrating those two things. There is no external, internal. There's just where your intent is, and that's why I think at the highest level, all martial arts are Qigong, in one shape or form. So yeah, good comment, Lisa.
And Yanmo follows up with, they didn't know there would be a YouTube in the future, right? So Andrew, take heart in the fact that you're, turning to videos for your instruction. In fact, Kurtis,
yes,
is teaching online. So,
yeah.
It's part of the new world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I always reference, sometimes I have to check in with Sifu YouTube. It's kind of funny because I did Boxeo Lum for many, many years. And then when that was my foundation Kung Fu style. And when I started working in the magazine, I moved away from it and started doing other styles and returned to it, I don't know, about after maybe a 10, 12-year break. and a lot of things were not connected anymore. And I had to consult good old Sifu YouTube. Playing down, I was like, what was the next move? Fortunately, one of my old Kung Fu brothers had put together all our forms. I know where site is, so I can kind of look at it and make snide comments about his Kung Fu being weak. But, I mean, he has it, he's made a record, which I didn't do. And so I can get to my forms, and at the same time, like I do Sun style Tai Chi, and I kind of let that go for a while too. And I had the good fortune to study under Sun Jianyun, who was the son of the Tang King. And I let it go, and then I had to do some work for YMA Publication Center, which I'm working for now, and they're putting out a Sun Tai Chi video with Yang Chen Tan, Liang Xiaoyu's son-in-law, Helen Liang's husband. And I started looking at it, going, I studied under Sun Jianyun, and I don't remember the freaking form. That's really embarrassing. I should really, I didn't study under her law. I don't claim to be a student of her or anything like that. I took a couple of private lessons from her, a couple of group lessons from her. I had dinner with her, but I'm not going to say I was her student by any stretch of the imagination. She was an amazing, amazing martial artist at her age. She was just inspirational. Moved like a cat still, tiny little Chinese woman, but man, she get in her bagua and she tells people behind you, crazy. But so I rebuilt it, and lo and behold, searching the web, I found a video of Grandmaster Sun Jianyun doing the form.
Wow.
Like, man, this is that. I gotta do this just like she's doing it,
That's
and
cool.
so, YouTube is an amazing, just such an amazing resource. And my generation, we got to see home video start up, right? When I was first starting to do Kung Fu, it was 8 millimeter, 16 millimeter. It's all film. And then, video came, and you started doing videos. Now, YouTube, it's all free, man. I can get any form I want if I just know the characters and search hard enough. Multiple versions. And yeah, I'll look at them, sure, because there's lessons there.
As Wu Xiaoman says, right, YouTube is one of the greatest inventions of the 21st century. YouTube University, we've all been there.
Yep, for sure.
Definitely.
Yep. The internet has really done a lot to consolidate martial arts. Because like we were talking about this before you came, Kurtis, that martial arts is very, it was so much an oral person-to-person transmission. And now, we can share like you're sharing with your students in Texas or wherever.
Yeah.
You can share all across the world very easily, very effortlessly.
Oh, the technology is just amazing. What I do is I record every class, right? Because you can do that because we're on Zoom.
Sure.
And then I archive it. So my students can go and like, if they want to know what I said in that class, they can go and watch it, and they can just like do it on their cell phone. Like they all have accounts to the website. And it's like, how cool is that? What a resource. I remember I used to have to get the video recorder, Sifu, it was like this big nervous thing. Sifu, can I record this? And, this, and then as media changes at each generation, I have to convert it. And it's like, there's really no excuses anymore. No excuses anymore. Not if you want it, it's there, it's definitely there. So,
yeah. Yeah, first question's free, man.
Okay, so you said it's funny but all that he knows is what he's learned from YouTube. So
getting back to Everything Everywhere All at Once, Martial Club, the Lay brothers, Andy and Brian Lay, learned everything off of YouTube. Yeah. Martial Club was originally a YouTube thing, but then there's the third person in Martial Club is Daniel Ma, and he's a Boxy alum, man. So
yeah.
And then here we have Jason Secret Sword. Couldn't agree more. It's still hard to educate people on the higher skilled contained in these arts, even with YouTube. Before it was unknown, contained only in the black and white cinema.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the higher skilled arts are hard to teach, regardless, no matter what.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out all those out, and
I mean, the same is true for kung fu. And it's the same with calligraphy. The same is with drawing comics. There's
with any art, it's a vital thing. The highest level, man. We're all trying to get that now. As Dylan put it, when I paint my masterpiece, we're trying to get there, and it's a moving river. You're shooting at moving targets.
Yeah.
Chi is sacred fire, Jill says. So Chi is sacred fire. Actually, funny thing. Okay, the character for Chi, the Chinese character, if you break it down, it's like a rice pot over a flame, and the steam rising from it is symbolic of the Chi. So the Chi is like the steam, right? And this actually gets into a very old way of thinking about vitality, and it exists in the West too. We use the word spirit. Spirit, we used to believe, this is like ancient Greek, I think, Greek philosophy. We used to believe that the soul resided in the breath, right? So that's where we get the term spirit. It's also where we get the terms like inspiration, to breathe in, expiration, to breathe out, conspiration, to breathe together, conspiracy. So it's embedded within our very language, the same notion of steam or vapor, being this essence of life, being breath. And when you think about it, that's what the most, you can pulse somebody, but you can also check their breath, and if they're not breathing, like Kurtis said earlier, no breath, you're dead.
the old mirror under the nose trick.
Mirror under the nose. That's right.
When I always think about that, when you say mind, body, spirit, I oftentimes think of spirit as being synonymous with breath, right? When you're trying to do these practices, right? It's that those three components, right? That trifecta,
For sure.
So, yeah. So
that coordination of breath is very key, and it's like one of those things that, I mean, you can instruct. And one of the things I've actually really admired about Hongga is that it has the breathing techniques and the sounds, particularly in iron wire, where it forces you to coordinate your breathing and your energies. Shaolin Temple, the stuff we do in Shaolin Temple has some of that, like when we did that final, and I remember my sifu like punching me in the belly, like making sure that, that noise was coming from my belly and not from my upper chest, that I was really getting that breath in. Boxing women doesn't really have that so much, or at least if it does, it's something that was lost in my teachings. But I remember Wing Lam, he sort of just breathe naturally, which is actually the true thing. You are supposed to breathe naturally, but it's amazing how unnatural natural breathing can be when, throwing flying kicks and prim sweeps and, various punches and kicks.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, the breath, I think that ultimately, if you watch the breath, that's one of those little indicators on how good somebody's skill is. When you see them just moving completely,
Mm-hmm.
and
When it's that chicken or the egg kind of thing, because you start to realize that the way your body contorts and bends exerts the air out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way that you breathe creates that physical movement. So it's kind of like, well, which comes first? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, the chicken is the egg.
Exactly.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
And Andrew says, by embellish, I mean, is it okay to vary the Gene Ching ever so slightly where things feel right? I think I know the answer, and that is to listen to the body.
Yeah. And I would caution you in that sometimes some of the things that are difficult or challenging are things that we need to embrace, because that might be a problem area. For example, when my hip has not been out lately because of because I'm getting old, but and it's been messing up my horse stance. I need to kind of breathe into that and focus on that and open up that quad and find that power there again. And it's challenging. My body flinches. I don't want to do that, but I need to push through it. And this is where I really miss having a live sifu who would just slap me and say, do that. Wait, that's where having a hands-on instructor is irreplaceable, because a good instructor knows just exactly how hard to push you, so you'll get to that next level much more efficiently, because there's all these things that prevent you from wanting to do that. All these forms of hesitation that get in the way, all these obstacles, and nothing like a stern sifu behind you kicking your ass saying, do it, say that bien. That's what they should do it once more time. In Shaolin, always say that bien, say that bien, say that bien. It's okay, one more time, got it, yeah.
Definitely.
So Andrew continues, right? Kurtis's last comment about mind, body, and breath leads to another question I think he thinks about a lot, right? Should breath follow movement? Movement follow breath? Should they both be happening simultaneously? He finds these things hard to talk about in text.
Yeah,
It's hard to talk about in talk.
yeah.
It's even hard to demonstrate as you're teaching,
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Kurtis, you go on that one first.
Well, I mean, generally speaking, I mean, it's everything together, right? But not always the case. It's all about what you're trying to achieve and the intent. Sometimes you do want to power up the breath first and then exert the motion, and sometimes it's the opposite. It really depends on what's going on, and the biggest thing is let's put it this way. A quick anecdote. My sifu, when I first started learning kung fu, I thought things very American, right? And so he would maybe every now and then he show me how to apply a technique, and I would say to him, okay, so every time that somebody punches, I'm going to use this technique, right? That's the 1-for-1 ratio. And he would go, I don't know, you tell me. And I would get really pissed off. I'd be like, no, damn it, you're the Grand Master. You tell me, like what is it? And over again, right? And I would ask him every time he teach me with sifu, how to use this, how to use that. And as always, one of my Chinese classmates from Chinatown would be like, okay, sifu wants to talk to you, right? That means he really wants to talk to me, because he would have somebody translate. And so they would translate in English, and they would say, look, he said, I can't tell you the answer to everything, because he goes, one, you might think that that's the only answer, and there may be something that you understand or figure out for yourself that I've never even thought of. And then, as always, he would look up at me with this kind of sheepish, kind of sly grin, I should say. And he would say, and also, I can't tell you all my secrets, right? but the truth is that those are the principles are variable, right? And definitely breathing and moving are at the same time in so many things, not always. But the truth is I can't tell you what your truth is, right? That's the thing is if I do that, I rob you of your experience, right? And it's not the answer that we want, right? When we're trying to learn, we want the 1-for-1 ratio, and that's a very American thing. But when you get that, and you get that scholastic explanation of things, you're robbed of all the spirituality of all this. Mm-hmm. And it's always, I always think about that the supposedly the original text of Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur, right? And there's this one line supposedly that's completely different than everything else, which is when they go off to search for the Holy Grail, okay, and they leave Camelot, all the knights, after they had the vision of the Holy Grail, they don't go out the front gate. They all go out the back into the forest directly, right, into the foliage. And it's completely, from what I understand, I've heard it's not in any of the other texts. It's just in the original French text. And that's symbolic, because the idea is they're looking for enlightenment. That's what the Holy Grail is. Right. And if they went down the road out the front gate, a road is paved because many people have walked it, and they're seeking somebody else's path to enlightenment. But by the author putting in that they go directly into the forest, they're forging their own path and finding their own path to enlightenment. And that's really the only way you can do it, So the technique, I always say, is limited. Concept is limitless, right? So you start to look into those concepts and find it for yourself. And the truth is I don't have all the answers either. A sifu is just somebody that's a little bit further on the path that can say, like, hey, watch out for this branch, watch out for this stream. But any sifu that says they're at the top of the mountain is not a sifu. That's somebody that's a charlatan, to be honest. That's my take on it. I'll get off the soapbox, but that's my.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think the key thing that you said was, you mentioned about intention. And when you're doing your practice, you've got to have intention. It's not just my intention is to emulate what my sifu does, or my intention is to do what this guy on YouTube does. how are you intending to use your martial arts? Are you using this for health, which is pretty much what I do now?
Yeah.
Are you using this for self-defense? Are you using this for what have you? I mean, for spirituality? Do you want to be a mantis? That's why you're doing this mantis stuff? I mean, what is your intention? And I think that's critical in all art. As an artist, is to put that intention into their work. Whether that intention is communicated, and this is sort of a comment on being a teacher, is communicated to the viewer, is entirely another thing. And I remember Robert Hunter, who was the lyricist for the Grateful Dead, released a book of lyrics because he's such a wonderful poet in terms of his lyricism. And in his introduction, he was saying that, there's the whole thing about, misheard lyrics, excuse me while I kiss this guy, that kind of stuff. Or, and he was saying that he thought that was really wonderful. He thought that it was, for him to have written these lyrics, they weren't set in stone. And for somebody else to take that and interpret their own way, he thought that was art. That was art, So, as a teacher, like Kurtis says, you're guiding the student. You can never really predict where they go. And I'm now old enough to see a lot of my students teaching or quitting or whatever. But it's you can only open the door.
Mm-hmm.
The student has to go through.
Definitely. And, I never fully articulated this, but I mean, I think it's a good, that's, I mean, and, not trying to plug my thing, but to explain it, the whole reason why I'm doing the comic book is to get the word out about Kung Fu. Like I realized, like I'm in my mid 40s now, so getting further and further up there. And it's like, I realized that the window's closing, and I realized that I have all this information I want to get out there, but if I stick to just me being in a room in one town teaching, I can't get the word out. So the idea is by doing art and spreading the gospel, as it were, I'm casting a wider net, and it just hopefully piquing the interest of more people about all these things that we do. That's so important, because like you said, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink, right? So, look at more horses. A bigger stable, you're gonna find that horse.
Nobody's gonna drink.
You thirsty?
Yeah, I mean, I think exploring other venues right now, at least in the West, the martial arts is very much in its own little box. Take for example like Jackie Chan or Jet Li, or even Michelle Yeoh to some degree. Although I think she's the first to really start breaking out of that. But they are martial arts stars first and foremost. And it's a shame because, Jackie's turned in some great dramatic work. Same with Jet. Michelle's phenomenal dramatic work. But they're still, maybe that's an Asian thing, they're still always kind of pigeonholed in this martial arts world, for better or for worse. Martial arts is its own kind of self-limitation. And it's something that Patrick and I worked very hard at when we were with the magazine, is trying to cross those borders and, like, let's get into video games, martial arts on video games. Well, video games has its own magazines. That doesn't work. Let's get into comics. Well, here you gentlemen still are, I mean, this is a great example, actually. This shirt is one of my favorite collaborations that Patrick and I did. It was the Mabu was a spin on Fubu, which is a popular hip hop brand back in the day. So, and we put this design together, and I remember everybody at Tire Claw kind of like, because Patrick and I worked on this a lot. We're like, I was doing the Patrick will get this. I was doing the Korean master thing, sitting behind his shoulder. Oh, make that pop, make this pop. Look at this design. It's like this. But and everybody at Tire Claw, nobody knew what Fubu was. Nobody into hip hop. And I mean, admittedly, I'm not that much into hip hop, but I knew enough about the culture, right? And I knew what Fubu was for sure. And so every Tire Claw, like, what the hell? What is this crazy design? That this is our Year of the Horse one, which is why Mabu, right? Year of the Horse, right? And Patrick's edition of the what are these called?
The Persistence of Vision, right?
Right. No, the name of the guy that did this motion study, I can't remember.
Woodridge?
Yeah, Woodridge, right. That was brilliant work, and it really ties it together. And the year that we put this out, and when I was kind of on going to tournaments and stuff, I was rocking this one a lot, and every once in a while I'd see somebody rocking one, or somebody would see it, and they were like, "That's it, man. That's it." It's like the ultimate like nerd thing is when you had two kind of nerdy, hip hop fans and martial arts fans, and that confluence, and when we reached out and made a connection with somebody else with that confluence, kind of like what we're doing here with comics and kung fu.
Totally.
That confluence is where it's at. It's where it's like the uber nerd. Not only are we kung fu buddies, but we're comic buddies, and it's this whole thing. It's much more focused. It's a more narrow, community. But in terms of comics, I think it's an area where there's much more growth, because I think when you look at just martial arts is going to be as it is always.
Yeah.
People say, "Oh, the tradition's dying. It's all going away." It's like, yeah, may have died centuries ago. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I'm still practicing. I don't know what your problem is. But, it is what it is, where it is now. It's not going to grow expansively unless something dramatic happens, and maybe something will. Comics, on the other hand, the influx of martial arts into comics, I think, is it's exciting to watch. I mean, I'm nowhere near a comic fan like you guys are, but just sort of watching from the outside, it's like, oh, this is really starting to open up. I'm seeing more and more influence of martial arts, traditional martial arts, expressed within comics, and that's thrilling. I'd like to see traditional martial arts expressed in martial arts movies.
Yeah.
So many of them, like, how many Wong Fei-ho movies is he actually doing Hung Ga?
Yeah.
How many?
Unfortunately.
Or how about the Yip Man movies, for that matter?
Well, they all do the rolling punch.
Yeah.
And they all have a Wing Chun dummy somewhere. So
Check.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And so Yanmo is coming in here with the question: why do you think hip hop is taking hold more in Korean culture with K-pop than J-pop or C-pop?
Oh, that's a good question.
Mm.
That's a good question.
What?
God, I'm kind of getting into some of that Korean.
Yeah.
The Korean hip hop is pretty badass. One thing, I always thought Chinese hip hop sounded kind of funky because of the nature of the language. The tones make it very difficult to rap. Or maybe I just don't appreciate it. Also, Chinese has this root of pentatonic scale, which I think is rude. I think so. That sounds terrible, right? The Chinese have this worldview of the five elements, that everything can go in these five elements, and they've projected that onto music, which created the pentatonic scale, which to me sounds kind of flat. Our scale is 7 notes, and sounds right to me, but maybe that's just because I was raised in this culture and raised on that kind of music. But pentatonic sounds kind of off. So I never really liked what I heard of Cantonese rap. You got me though on the difference between Korean and Japanese K-pop and J-pop rap or hip hop, because the language is very similar. It took me a while actually to be able to distinguish the difference. If I'm hearing somebody speaking Korean or Japanese very quickly, it'll take me a little bit before I can figure out which it is exactly. And that's just because I'm very unfamiliar with Korean culture, which is ironic because Patrick and I worked with Koreans for 20 plus years, and they were just very unscrutable. I still don't really have a good grasp on Korean culture beyond Korean film, which I am loving to death. So much stuff is coming out of Korea now that I'm getting so excited about. I mentioned Jung-Yi earlier. Space Sweepers. Did you guys see Space Sweepers? I love that movie. Oh, beautiful Korean comedy, science fiction. I don't know. It's one of those. It's worth your time. It's on Netflix. Space Sweepers.
All right, I'll check it out.
And of course, all the sword and all the sword and sorcery epics, what we would call wuxia epics. Korea's got some great ones. Just really great ones. I don't know. I don't know what it is. There's a part of me that wants to look at Korean culture as its own. They were stuck in a hard land in between China and Japan, and had to fight both fronts at different times. And so that in many ways they've taken the best of both of those cultures and made this totally new, original indigenous culture that's really beautiful. And I think that's why one of the reasons why they're so powerful in pop culture now with music and film. I don't know what's happening in the comic scene. Is there a Korean? There must be a Korean comics.
Yeah, there's
Webtoons.
the online.
Right, they're pioneering the vertical scroll in comics, on your phone.
To the point where people are changing the format just for webtoons, so you can almost see when somebody's doing, you're going to do this on webtoons. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
See, Wusherman, no, one more knowledge drop by Wusherman,
I tell you, man, you guys ever meet this guy in the flesh?
You got to. You got
to go nuts.
He and I have chit-chatted on the Discord server here and there, but
good.
Yeah.
Very good.
A nice long. Well, this is the reason why we have to pitch a comics food show at the next San Diego Comic Con, just so that we can all be in one place at one time. And who cares if there's an audience?
Yeah,
right.
We'll be the audience.
We'll just turn all the tables, the seats towards each other and talk. And
definitely.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'll see how things go. I mean, I think, well, San Diego Comic Con is San Diego Comic Con, but I think that there's a lot of movement in the con world right now. Fan Expo is really interesting.
Oh yeah,
what's happened with Fan Expo is really interesting. I mean, they're basically after they gobbled up Wizard World. Here you have this organization that has control of they have control of MegaCon, which is the I think the third largest con in Florida, in the country, but it's based in Florida. And then they got all of Wizard World, which had all of had little mini tiny cons all across the country. But now they've got all that network, and they came in to San Francisco with guns blazing. I mean, fully well produced. Very good attention to detail. I was really impressed with how slickly it was run. I'm hoping the best for them for the next 5 years because the contract was 5 years.
Nice.
I'm sure they're going to be doing something. They must do a Fan Expo LA or something like that. But you should definitely dial in. And those smaller cons are super easy to penetrate. Like we could definitely do something at Silicon if they manage to have another one. I imagine we could probably weed our way into I don't know. That's an interesting proposition.
Definitely
working on the show.
The Comics Art Museum in San Francisco has been doing a lot of little one-off, like specialized cons. So
really.
So yeah, they did.
So they're the ones that were connected with that one. What was it called? There was that con you wanted to do a table at. You were talking to me about.
Right, that was one of the cartoon art museums. It was like the BIPOC Comic Fest.
That's right, BIPOC Comic. Yeah.
So, and then of course Wusherman, another knowledge drop, Dragon Fest by the Martial Arts History Museum.
Yeah, and Gerald Okamura always present. I like how he's become his own icon now. It's
I know, right?
Oh my gosh, it's just you can't help but not miss him in Big Trouble in Little China, and now his pseudo eagle claw pose is like,
Yeah. I've never met him actually.
I haven't either, but he has a cool action figure. That's what I know. I know they made a Gerald Okamura action figure, so that's.
There's a whole kind of group of martial artists in Southern California that I'm not very well connected with it because they're mainly inside Kung Fu Circle. And while Kung Fu Tai Chi was sort of a competitor, they kind of stayed in their circle, and we kind of kept with our San Francisco circle, and there you have it.
Yeah.
There was a weird split in our state in that terms, but there you go. I've never been to Dragon Fest. I've often thought about it, but
yeah, neither have I. And I'm out here. I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. What's up with that, man?
Yeah. Kung Fu Tai Chi correspondent in Dragon Guest. We'll talk.
Hey, yeah,
On the
to be
ground.
done. Be done.
The man on
It
the sea.
reminds me, you owe me an article, don't you?
Yeah. I'll talk to you about it. It's
Okay.
almost there. Tomorrow, I think.
Very good.
And so more. Well, Wuxiaman wants us all to meet up there at Dragon Con, which
Pinata Mo's going to buy us a drink while we're in.
Yeah, nice.
Here's to you.
and then I want
Here's to
more
you.
his to come back to that San Francisco Tai Chi connection, right? Like his Tai Chi Sifu was in big trouble in Little China for 10 seconds.
Nice. Well, here's my most nerdy Big Trouble in Little China thought, and everybody I've said this to thinks it's a great idea, and maybe I can do it as a comic book one day. My crossover would be Ash from the Evil Dead meets Jack Burton for Army of Darkness and Big Trouble in Little China crossover, where Lo Pan gets the Necronomicon. Just gonna leave that there on the table. Think about it.
Didn't I thought Boom Studios did do a crossover with those two characters.
I think they did a Snake Plissken. This is how nerdy I'm getting. They did Snake Plissken and Jack Burton. So they did.
Okay. Yeah. Well, for 5 minutes, James Hong wanted me to do a Big Trouble in Little China comic with him.
Oh, how cool!
And so that was like a fun. He didn't have the rights to it, so it didn't really go anywhere. But that's what led to him showing up in a page of Tiger's Tail back in the day, just because he was like, "Put me in your comic," and I'm like, "Sure."
Yeah. I'm just
he was a good friend of Tire Claw back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I remember going to Miss Asia contest with him and Ren Guanyi. That was a weird. I don't even remember. That was an Andy Ching thing. I don't even remember how that happened exactly. And, I remember the all the girls, all the contestants were going to go out to something after, and James Hong was, "What about me?" You're great, man. You're great. Go tag along with all those young hotties, man. You're my hero.
He's earned it.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, thanks, Andrew. Yeah. So we'll try and push for that.
My people will call your people.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
Oh, excellent. Very cool stuff.
Well, I think this has been epic.
Yeah.
I can, as Gene knows, this is just like my mid-afternoon, so I'm fresh for another 5 hours of BSing.
Yeah, we could go all night like this for sure.
Yeah, totally. Well, hopefully we can do it again, sometime in the future, because it's always a pleasure. I always knew of Gene Ching from afar, from the magazine, and then when I got to do some writing, and we were emailing back and forth, I just had the most fun time. I told Gene I started out as a fan of Kung Fu Tai Chi magazine, and then I became a fan of Gene Ching, and now I'm a fan of Patrick Lugo. So great hanging out with you guys.
Absolutely. Sometime we all three must get together in the flesh.
Yes.
Maybe at some great con where we can walk the aisles and comment on tables and take pictures with cosplayers.
Definitely. Hey, if we do, let's cosplay as the 3 storms from Big Trouble in Little China. Just run that out there. I think we could pull it off. So
the thing is that those hats would be very effective in the crowds.
Yeah. For that 6 foot safety COVID distance, So.
Well, hey, I should be Peter Kwong then, since he's a Boxy alum guy.
There you go.
Awesome. All for it.
Love it.
He came out to our tournament one year. That was really a delight.
Oh, really?
And hang out with him. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So one more, my little plug, Tire Claw Elite Championships, San Jose, May 6th and 7th.
Nice. Right.
Yes, that's right. Is there going to be a heavy Guando division? Do we know? Yes.
They still have the one we built.
Oh, that's excellent.
It's in the rule book, so we're going to do it.
Nice.
I took one of our screw together Guando and I filled it full of metal shot. So it's about 13-14 pounds. Before the pandemic, I could use it. I did a little video with it.
Wow.
I don't know if I could use it right now, but
that's cool.
But yeah, so we're gonna have one event. It's a showcase event, heavy Guando, and everybody has to use that one. We have a video on how to make it, which I can resurface, and just gets something around 13 pounds. But that's actually not it's heavier than most people are used to doing Guangdao now, but it's not really a heavy Guangdao. Do you work heavy? Have you ever worked heavy Guangdao, Curtis?
Yeah. I mean, I've played around. It's not my main thing, but I have sometimes. Not with but I mean, probably not super heavy. I mean,
Yeah,
wushu heavy, but I have one that's pretty heavy.
yeah,
But it's amazing when you see people doing that, like the super ridiculous heavy ones. It's like,
yeah, like the 100-pound ones. It's
yeah,
ridiculous.
it's like part kettlebell, part kung fu
Yeah.
weapon. It's amazing.
Well, it used to be an examination criterion.
Mm.
We went for the imperial exams. They have examples, lots of footage. I've never actually seen one of those weapons in the flesh, but I've seen a lot of archive footage of people doing these heavy, and they're like wrought iron, thick shaft Guangdao with these giant pommels and blades.
Wow.
You can see that some of that on the internet if you search around heavy Guangdao.
Nice.
But
there's some archival footage, and Yan Mo mentions his 10-pounder. So
nice.
How heavy is that?
10-pound that's good. That's good. You should be able to. Yan Mo, you should come into the tournament. 13 pounds, just 3 more pounds. You can handle it.
I know. Which is heavier, a 10-pound bag of feathers or a 10-pound Guangdao?
I can tell you which one is sharper.
Which would you rather be hit by?
I could also tell you which one I'd want to get into a pillow fight with a bunch of ninjets. So there you go.
Horse chopper. Totally. Oh, great.
All right. Well, we have a couple of videos we want to wrap this up with, but anyone here, all of you folks should definitely keep an eye out for the Tiger Claw Elite Championship. If you want to have, one place where you can see the best Kung Fu, to be found in one place, I guess. So May 7th, 6th?
6th and 7th.
6th and 7th?
Right after Cinco de Mayo. Easy to remember.
And in San Jose, it's going to be epic. I'm certain.
And they mainly support these guys and their Kickstarters. They're putting this and bringing this content to you. And, both of them are tremendous people and tremendous artists.
Thank you, sir.
And I look forward. And here, I got to flash this. I'm hoping both of you succeed. But I'm hoping Patrick succeeds because I got some old original stuff.
Oh, my gosh.
Someday, this will be worth so much money.
Totally.
Ultra rare. Only like 5 ever printed of that one.
Wow. Yeah. Good stuff.
There you go.
Just says thank you, Andrew. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thanks everyone. This has been such a crazy fun time. So, but as we've been doing, Gene, you'll appreciate this. We did this on an improv, and it's been working where we do our rolling credits at the end, but then we slip in a Marvel style after credit sequence.
Okay.
From one of our things that we've been doing, and so far we've been able to pull it off, and deliver. So I think I've got something queued up for that purpose, and bless Kurtis because he's just totally trusting me to press play without having seen what I have queued up. So
that's a very dangerous thing to do. Take it from me.
It'll be fun either way.
It'll be funny, but at one point it's going to sting you so hard because he's born on your side of the monkey, man. Don't only trust him so far before he steals your peach.
Right, that's why you keep him right behind you, Gene. Right. Well, okay, so Gene, we'll talk in a second, but let's deliver some. Let's press play on one of these for the rest of our viewers.
Yeah.
So.
Go for it.
Hi, I'm Lugo, author, illustrator, comic creator, and the art director for Kung Fu magazine for more than 20 years. But I'm here to talk to you about a project that's really special to me. It's a middle grade graphic novel, A Tiger's Tale. Imagine the story of tigers and dragons and martial artists and monsters. So when I launched the campaign for A Tiger's Tale Volume 1, I did not know what to expect, but it succeeded thanks to a group of passionate backers. It was also awarded the Make More Comics art grant that year and was later featured as part of an art gallery exhibit. And that's why I'm coming to Kickstarter, to cover production fees, printing, copy editing, things like that. Books completed, with the exception of a few pages I've set aside for color over the course of the campaign. This turned out to be a popular feature of Volume 1's campaign, so I thought I'd bring it back for Volume 2. I think it's going to be great fun for everyone. Hope you'll support the campaign. I'm very excited about it. Thanks for stopping by.
Very cool.
That was one. We have I haven't found that queued up thing, so I lied to everyone. But there you go, Gene. That's my peach that I've stolen.
Excellent.
But we have Kurtis, if you'd like to play your video next, we could wrap this up.
Please check it out, everybody. This is the official trailer for Shadow Ghost. As a kid, I loved Kung Fu movies. So I went to Chinatown, trained with a wise teacher, and became a Kung Fu master. Sounds simple, right? Not really. My journey, like the study of Kung Fu, was as arduous as it was rewarding, filled with as many secrets as revelations and as much heartache as triumph. It's a defining moment in my life, and while I began studying Kung Fu to learn how to fight, what I discovered was a way to live. Martial arts never came easy to me. I was far from talented, and even farther from being the chosen one. It was only through years of tenacious perseverance that I was able to make steady progress. And so, I was surprised when my master told me that I should teach Kung Fu and share the art outside of Chinatown. I did just that and taught Kung Fu to my own students for 20 years. I always wanted to do more to share the art of Kung Fu with others, but was limited by only being able to teach those within my immediate area. What about the rest of the world? Then one day, I had one of the deepest insights about Kung Fu. I realized that the punches, kicks, throws, and myriad of martial maneuvers are merely the delivery system for the true essence of Kung Fu, the philosophy and way of life. Having worked for years as a professional artist and storyteller in film, animation, video games, and comic books, I realized that I could draw upon this unique skill set to share my passion for Kung Fu with the greater world. And so I created Shadow Ghost, a Kung Fu comic by a Kung Fu master. The first issue is created entirely by myself, from story and art to colors and lettering. Every panel is filled with unprecedented accuracy in its depiction of Kung Fu by a comic book creator who knows from first-hand experience what it means to be a Kung Fu master. Shadow Ghost is a martial arts coming-of-age story about a young man whose search for the truth about a legendary hero leads him to study Kung Fu, and through a twist of fate, becomes part of the legend himself. For the first time in comic book history, you can immerse yourself further in each issue with Kung Fu skills technology, powered by Tiger Crane Kung Fu. Scan the QR code at the back of the comic and follow an exclusive link to an online instructional video where I teach you Kung Fu techniques featured in the series. With Kung Fu skills technology, you can do more than just read about the Shadow Ghost saga. You can become a part of it. The first issue is completely finished and ready for print. All that's needed is for you to make a pledge of support so that we can
Me a special guest, Eisner Award-winning comic book artist Jeff Darrow.
Shadow Ghost is the story of Kung Fu. It's about the people, the art, the culture, and the philosophy. It's my story and the story of those that I've learned from. taught, fought, and loved. Join me and become part of the vibrant legacy in a place and time where we might not be the chosen one, but where we can make a choice to be part of something bigger and greater than just ourselves. I'm Sifu Kurtis Fujita, and this is Shadow Ghost, the Kung Fu comic by a Kung Fu master.
A big fan of your work for a number of years. I mean, these even made their way from New York to California, you know. They took a little bit of damage. You can see the sun burning here.
It's good. And makes them
real, you know. I keep them to read them.
Yeah, not, you know, stuck in a, like, you know, they put comics in plastic slabs, they call them. They'd like plastic coffins, which I find ridiculous. But used to be parents who say, oh, I don't want my kids reading comics, but they would read them, and myself, and you'd see words, and if they didn't know them, we'd look them up in the dictionary. That's something we might not do with, you know, the reading assignments we got from school. So I know I improve what little vocabulary I have from reading comics. I go, oh, what does omnipotent mean? I go, how can I say omnipotent? I used to pronounce it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what, you know, astonishing meant, or behemoth, and all these words they use. And I looked them up, and that came from reading comics. And if anytime you can get a child to read, you're winning the fight, I think.
Oh yeah. I mean, like comics are now for kids again, right? There's like this huge boom of like young reader comics. So we've kind of gone full circle.
Once again, not mine,
but okay, well, yeah, I definitely am excited to talk about Shaolin Cowboy. Like I've mentioned, you know, over at Kung Fu Magazine, as soon as they came out via like Burly Man, like first of all, Kung Fu Magazine watched the development of the Matrix very closely. Yeah. As you know, we interviewed fight choreographer Yen Wu Ping. We watched the whole transition of Hong Kong cinema coming to the States.
Yeah.
And so me being a comic fan, when I saw Burly Man comics spawned out of the Matrix, we could say, you know.
Well, I know that at that point, I think they contacted them, see if they wanted to take an ad out in the Kung Fu Magazine for my comic, but